Welcome back to my studio and a new video. Today I'm going to show you how I made this puffy trim for my Ariel ball gown. So let's get started. The materials you'll need for this video are fabric, a quilting ruler, marker, rotary tool, matching thread and a size 10 beading needle, rhinestones, beads, glue. You'll also want a turning tool. If you don't have a turning tool, your marking pin or even a magic wand will do the trick. And don't forget your sewing machine and iron. Step 1, measure and mark strips. So if I want my final trim to be 1 inch wide, which is what I want to cut these strips into 3-inch strips. That leaves 1/2 of an inch for each side, each seam, and then that once we flip it and turn it, that'll create a 1-inch strip in the end. So this is my ruler. It is a 3-inch ruler, and we're only going to make this amount of trim for the purposes of this tutorial. On the actual ball gown for Ariel that I made this trim on, I did cut 200 inches of silk Dupioni. So we're gonna just mark that, and I'm gonna mark that. Step 3 is we're gonna cut the strips. So this is where you're gonna need your ruler again, or any kind of straight edge. Rulers are just really nice because most of them are made out of acrylic. And you're gonna want your rotary tool. You can use scissors, but I like my rotary tool. If you're using a rotary tool, you do want a self-healing mat underneath, otherwise you will cut up your table. So we're gonna start with the edge that is actually cut into first. As you can see here, I made some bias tape earlier. But we're gonna just start on this edge right here, and we're just gonna take this along. For the purpose of these strips, you do not actually need to cut it on the bias. However, since I've already made bias out of this silk, I am going to be cutting this on the bias. It's not necessary, but I mean, it will give it a little bit of a stretch, so that's something that you have to kind of keep in mind when you are working with your fabric and with your final pieces. Cool. So these are now we're gonna cut right here as well. Whee. Awesome. So now we have our 2 pieces, and if you want to make this one continuous strip, you can sew these edges together, which is what we will be doing. Okay, step 3 is to sew strips, and we're going to sew strips in 2 separate ways. To start, we're going to just sew these 2 pieces together so we have a longer strip, and we're going to sew this on a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So. And my stitch length is at a 2 probably closer to a 3mm stitch length. Okay, so now we're gonna press this. First of all, we're gonna press the seam so that we have it like so. Just to kind of set our stitches, and now we're gonna press this open. Okay, so now that we have this ready to sew, we are going to pin it right sides together. So now we're gonna sew this strip together. Okay, step 4 is to turn our strip. So I'm gonna use this lovely turning tool here to show you guys how I turn mine, but you can also use a marker or like I used to use my Harry Potter wand before I before I got this tool. So with the pointy side here, we are going to put the opening on this and we're gonna feed it through like so. All the way. And then because we have an end here, it's gonna stop. You'll see. So because we sewed up this end, it's gonna stop. If we hadn't sewn up this end, we could just fold it over, but then we're gonna close it with our hand. So you see how my hand is holding these guys. So we're gonna close it. And now we are going to push it over itself on this side like so. There we go. Kind of looks like a scrunchie right now. And huzzah! So now we can just can just pop it off of the tool. So we don't need that anymore and we can just go like this. So now if you were making like a spaghetti strap or binding of some sort, you would totally want to press this, but we kind of want it to have a little bit of air and fluidity into it, so we're not going to press it for the purposes of this. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to actually fold it inside itself. And I'm going to sew this shut. We're not going to do this on camera, but I'm just going to sew this shut real quick. Step 5 is measure and mark strips. What this means is we're going to take our ruler, and for this specific trim, the one that I did on Ariel, I marked it every 2 inches. And this is marking where our gathers are going to go. So we're going to do that here. We're every 2 inches. We're just going to mark. And this is where our gathers are going to go. So right there. And right there. And you do this for your entire strip of fabric. Step 6 is gather and bead. Now for Ariel, I used this bead trim on her sleeves, and to do this portion, it's basically one big string. To do this portion, I actually cut the individual pieces so that they would make an entire oval. These are my cast-offs. So for this one, we're actually just going to use these guys right here. And that's how we're going to sew it versus how I did it on Ariel, where we had a perfect little like diamond like that. So let's get into it. Here is my needle and thread. And I have my marking. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna, in this crease here, sew through into the top like so. And this is where we're gonna nest our little, our knot. And then we're also gonna just trim up this. You can do this all at the end or you do it as you go. I like to do it as I go. I like everything as clean as I possibly can get it when I am actually making the thing. So we are going to nest our knot in that crease or in that seam, and then we're basically doing a gather. So what we want to do is take it about, that looks like 1/4 of an inch, and then we've got another like 1/2 inch or so that we would like to do, and then right off the edge. So we're kind of creating something that looks like this. So that when we pull it together, it's actually going to scrunch. So it will scrunch. And then we're going to just sew this piece like that. so that it'll close on itself. And now what we're kind of trying to do is, this is at the back of our piece, and this is actually going to be the front of our piece. So now that we've got, this one doesn't quite look like a puff, but when we get our second stitching in, you'll start to see a puff form. So now that we're here, we're going to take our beading, and I am going to go into this little hole right here, and I am just going to, with my fingers, hold this down, and we are gonna sew there around that thread. And this is, should not loop like that, it should go like so. And then we will go back through onto this side and bring that back. And now on the back side of this, because we're only attached on one side right now, on the back side we're going to go through all these layers that we are gathering. And see how this guy is flipping up? We don't want that. So from the back side, we are going to go through that space there. And now we're going to flip this forward again. It's a lot of backwards and forwards, and that's just how it goes. And then we can sew it like that. And then once more, we go through this side. And back through. And there's that. So this is attached pretty thoroughly, and this is gathered. So now we're just going to take and tie this guy off and move on to the next one. And I'll go over this one more time just so you guys get, just so you get the gist of it. And if you are like me and you're trying to watch yourself sew this through the monitor of your camera, you're gonna make mistakes. Like I just did. I'm pretty sure I just made a mistake there, but that's fine, whatever. So here we go. And awesome. I'm just gonna do one more little knot. I knot this. I knot the heck out of everything I sew. It is just a thing I do. Here, this is our seam. We're gonna just nest our little knot right up in there, and then we're just gonna go whoop, whoop, and right on through. I try to get as close to this crease as I can get, like so. So you pull it, and then you kind of want to mold, like form your little puff the way you want it, so that you can make sure that it'll look how you want it. And then we're gonna go like this. Take our bead, and we're gonna thread our needle through the bead here. This is the top. Now let's flip this to the side so we can see it. The hard thing about hand sewing is you create the tension. So if things get loose, like my gather, it's because I've created the tension and I am not holding it tight enough to keep this gather in place. So I have to, when I sew this, pull it tighter. Otherwise, if we get too far into this design, we will no longer have a nice little gather. It'll just be a blob. So, like that. And then let's come around to this other side. And once again, we're gonna just come through this fabric here, because we want this to create a nice gather and a nice little, it kind of looks like a candy with like beads as the wrappers. I've never, like, that's kind of what it looks like to me. Like, especially when you look at it from this way and you see this end on here, you know, if that was a lot shorter, that would totally look like a candy with wrapper. I guess if you wanted to make something that was like that, this would be a way to do it. one of many ways you could do it, obviously. Just like all sewing. Okay, so now we can not knock the camera and tying this off. And as you can see here, when you go and you continue to do this design all the way down, you're gonna just keep creating these little puffs, and that's how we're gonna get that the look to it. The final step is applying a rhinestone. Step 7 is rhinestone, and you guys have seen me do lots of tutorials on rhinestoning, but essentially we're just gonna put a dot of glue here and here, which are our the centers of our piece, and then we will take and we will place our rhinestone right there and our rhinestone right there, and there you have it. You've got some puffy trim. See, look how pretty that is. All right, and now you know all of my secrets. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you would like to see me create better quality content more often, please consider checking out my Patreon, where we are currently working towards our goal of buying a new camera. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy sewing!